This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I am your host, No Tsaluki, and on today's episode, March Madness in full swing. Michigan and Michigan State playing last weekend. Michigan State out Michigan in the Sweet 16. We'll talk about both those teams as well as the whole March Madness and the NCAA tournament as a whole as well. Also, Lions free agency in full swing. They signed a big body receiver that I really like. I'm going to talk about him. And a linebacker that I think that has a chance to compete for a starting job and could be a key special teams player as well. I really like these signings. And I think a little bit more about the NFL draft that'll be coming up in just over a month as well. Some of the latest from the Lions headquarters with regards to who they possibly will draft, especially with that number 2 overall pick. Glad I'm back with you guys after a couple of week hiatus. 2 weeks ago, I was down in Florida with the John Carroll baseball team. We played 7 games down there. I was doing stats. I was taking pictures. I was writing stories for our website, jcusports.com. So it was definitely a lot of fun. The weather was amazing. And so that's why 2 weeks ago I just decided, I'm gonna air the part 2 of the Dave Shule interview, since that was about an hour and 15 minutes. So kind of divvied it up a little bit and aired that 2 weeks ago. And then last week I just got really busy with a lot of stuff going on at work. We're full swing into the spring season here at John Carroll. So lots to do as well. So I had to take a little bit of a break last week, but now I'm back. We're talking a lot about Detroit sports because this scene has really completely changed. And we're going to get to the Lions later. And obviously last time we talked, there was no MLB season. The lockout was still happening. Now there's an MLB season. We are going to save some Tiger talk for another time. We're not going to be discussing Tigers here. I think that'll be for an episode in the coming weeks. We're going to do sort of a whole season preview on that, and because I think this Tiger team, is definitely a team that teams should look out for this season. It should be exciting, especially with Spencer Torkelson and Riley Green among others. But we were actually a couple weeks ago in Florida. We were right there near Tiger Town. We were at Henley Field for a game against Albion. And, of course, Henley Field was the longtime home of the Tigers spring training, I believe from 1931 to 1965. They took a little hiatus in the 40s because of a World War II. But really, I think it was just an excellent trip, and it was really cool. It's such a small little stadium, not many stands, but it really felt, really old school and a very intimate atmosphere over there at Henley Field. So I remember walking on the field before the game and thinking, man, look at all the Tiger greats that have played at this field, and really the other teams that they've faced, in spring training. I bet, the Yankees with Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, those legendary players, Al Kaline, of course, for the Tigers, Mickey Lolich, Hammer and Hank Greenberg, even back in the day. So Willie Horton. So there's a lot of Tiger legacy that is at that field I got chills as I entered the park over there. That is for sure in sunny Florida. Took the 15-hour bus ride back as well. We did not fly down there, but it was good. It was still I was still able to catch a little bit of sleep as much as I could, and watch some movies on the bus as well to keep up with the time. And as we made our way back to Cleveland, as we chewed some time out. But I want to start with March Madness. And March Madness is always one of my favorite times of the year. And I think if we did an episode last week, I think I would have done the whole 64 team thing and see which team wins what and all that. But I just, like I said, I just didn't have a whole lot of time last week to do an episode. But this week, yeah, I think there's some really good Sweet 16 matchups. And in terms of my bracket, I'm actually 7th in my league right now, and only 40 points behind the first place. So I think my bracket's doing good so far. Obviously not perfect. I think I read something. There's only 2 brackets out there that are still perfect. I don't know how you can be perfect at this point, especially with, the biggest upset of them all, St. Peter's, as they defeated Kentucky and Murray State to go on to the Sweet 16. How about that? 2 years in a row where a 15 seed makes the Sweet 16. You had Oral Roberts last year, and then Murray or I'm sorry, St. Peter's this year. But I will say our good friend Steve Dace over at the Michigan podcast, he had a great episode last week on his Michigan podcast about bracket tips. It was 12 tips and how to pick teams in your bracket. And I gotta say, it was a lot. It was very analytical based. But I said, you know what? I'm going to use our good friend Steve Dace's tips here, a good friend of the network. I'm going to use his tips this year. So I did, and I actually ended up picking Duke versus Arizona as the in the championship. So hopefully that will come around. I think definitely those were teams that in his podcast he was talking about are teams that statistically favor the odds from previous years with certain that they're in the top rankings of certain statistical categories that I can't remember, but that favor going to the national championship game and all that. So I took Steve Dace's advice this year. Duke, UCLA, Arizona, and Auburn I had in the Final Four. Of course, Auburn lost in the second round to Miami. My other choice in my other bracket was Kansas, and Kansas is still alive. So I'm hoping that I can at least hit on these other three, UCLA, Duke, and Arizona. And I have Duke winning it all, and they played a very tough game against Michigan State. Michigan State gave them all they could handle, I think, in that game, but Michigan State just didn't have it all complete in that one. But it was a real dogfight from the end. And I gotta say, I'm really proud of Tom Izzo and the way that they fought as well. This is a team that really struggled down the stretch. They started off hot and one of the top 10 teams in the country and sort of fell off at the end of the year. I had a feeling they would beat Davidson in the first round, 7 seed versus 10 seed, going up against Foster Loyer, who really wasn't much of a factor as I thought, because I didn't think Foster would be going off against Michigan State at all. And I thought it was a very interesting dynamic of how there was, and they mentioned it on the broadcast, how he was a captain for Michigan State and now a captain at Davidson. So he was a captain at both programs basically as he was facing off against his old Spartans. But I didn't think Davidson had a chance. I know it was a tough game. Davidson did give them all they could handle, but Michigan State and Joey Hauser, 27 points, ended up taking over. And I just want to know, where the heck has Joey Hauser been? This is a guy I was hoping he would be dropping 20, 25 points a night for Michigan State, but he just ended up becoming more of like a 5 or 6 point a night guy, and just sort of a little disappointing with Joey Hauser in his overall career, the transfer from Marquette at Michigan State. But he had a good tournament. I mean, he played well defensively against Duke, and that'll be it, as he is no longer going to be a Spartan due to graduation. But we'll see where this Tom Izzo team goes from here. I think it's going to be interesting to see how some of the transfers that they have on the team, see how they develop as well. The guy from the guy that would transfer from Northeastern, Walker. I think it's going to be interesting to see how he develops as well. And then of course Christie. I think he was a real shooter in high school and shot the ball decent this year as well. So I think Michigan State should definitely have a top 25 ranking by the preseason of next year, and it's really going to depend and see if they get that higher seed, if they can really push through, especially at the end of the season. That's for sure. In Michigan too. I mean, I didn't catch Michigan as much as I did Michigan State this last week in the tournament, but doing their job against Tennessee. I actually, in my bracket, I did have Michigan advancing to the Sweet 16. And I know they snuck in. There's a lot of debate. They were only 3 games above 500, sneaking into the tournament as an 11 seed without a play-in game. And Michigan, remember, they had a 1 seed last year in the tournament. And, being able to get that, unfortunately an 11 seed, a lot worse of a season this year. And then they had the whole Juwan Howard incident with choking one, or slapping one of the Wisconsin coaches and all that. Throwing a punch, and through all that, they're in the Sweet 16. So I got to give Juwan Howard and the whole Michigan staff credit. Hunter Dickinson, he's been playing well. I got to tell you, I haven't really watched Hunter Dickinson a lot these last couple years, but when I did, he's a real tall presence in the paint. He's got a little flair to his game as well, so he's definitely a force. And this is a team that Michigan, they can get hot at any moment when they're shooting the ball. Do I think they're going to beat Villanova? I hope not. For my bracket's sake, but I seriously, even brackets aside, I just think Villanova is just too deep of a team, and they have a lot of veterans, and I just don't see. And anytime Villanova is like a 1 or 2 seed, they seem to do really, really well in the tournament, at least the Elite Eight. Final Four in that range. So I just don't see Michigan being able to win against Villanova this week. I believe Thursday over in I believe California, or was that actually no? That's where Duke. Will be playing at. But a couple other interesting matchups, I think, in this Sweet 16. Gonzaga, Arkansas, Duke, Texas Tech, and then the 8 seed North Carolina versus UCLA, an 8 seed upsetting the 1 seed Baylor. And I'm really hoping I need UCLA because, like I said before, they're in my Final Four, and all those guys are pretty much back from last year's Final Four team. So we'll see what happens there. But North Carolina getting hot at the right moment for sure. Purdue, St. Peter's. We'll see if St. Peter's, the 15 seed, who's been getting hot, the Jesuit school, if they can advance to the Elite Eight. Arizona, Houston, as well, and then Kansas, Providence. I was a little surprised about Providence, honestly. That was one of my upsets in the first round. Providence versus South Dakota State. I actually had South Dakota State over the Friars, and then I had them playing Richmond, and then I had Richmond winning against South Dakota State, but Richmond lost to Providence, so that didn't matter as well. And Iowa State upsetting Wisconsin. Big win for that program. And Miami, Jim Larinaga. Remember he had that Final Four team with George Mason back in 2006? Well, he's back in the Sweet 16. Beat Auburn 79-61. How about that? The 2 seed. I know Auburn struggled down the stretch. I did pick them in the Final Four, though. I thought this was going to be a team in the SEC that would get hot. And the SEC's just been having a great year at basketball. But unfortunately, just not enough for Auburn as Miami, handled them pretty decently, 79-61. So that 10 versus 11 seed matchup, Miami, Iowa State. And then Kansas, Providence. I think that's going to be a very interesting Midwest division to see who comes out on top. I'm hoping it's Kansas, but any of those 10, 11 seeds, some of them have been really sneaky in the Final Four these last couple of years. So it's good. I think it's going to be really exciting. I still think this tournament is up for grabs for anyone. And it kind of is like that every year where it's sort of up for grabs. But this year in particular, I didn't think there was one team that I said, this team is really, really good, and they're going to win this whole thing without a question. But I just don't see that this year, and it's definitely up for grabs. That is for sure. So we'll keep you updated these next couple weeks, see what happens in March Madness, and should be really exciting as well. All right, we're going to get to some Lions free agency here, and I got to say, 2 weeks ago, the free agency hadn't really, gone into full effect. Now, since the new league year, I should say, that's when all these free agencies have been happening. You look at so many free agency moves around the NFL. You got just recently Matt Ryan going to the Indianapolis Colts. You have Deshaun Watson, a very controversial move in Cleveland here, going to the Browns. And, I'm over here in Cleveland right now, and there are many, many people who are very, very against that. And I think it just has to do with the whole abuse cases, alleged abuse that Deshaun Watson has had, and they've talked about it, with relating it to the Kareem Hunt situation and all that, and how the Browns are taking another chance on this player, another player with that past. And I think that's why it's creating a lot of backlash, especially in Cleveland. A lot of people are really, really going off on it over here. At least that's what I gauge the news scene, the sports news scene, to be over here in the land, as they call it. And Khalil Mack going to the Chargers. He is reunited with his old coach in Chicago, linebackers coach Brandon Staley, John Carroll graduate, of course, as I always talk about. And how about Von Miller going to the Buffalo Bills? Shout out to the Bills, by the way. Mike Shula, the brother of Dave Shula, who we had on a couple weeks ago. Please go check that podcast out. He just got a job as an offensive analyst for Buffalo after being fired as quarterbacks coach for the Denver Broncos. So just a lot of moves, coaching-wise and player-wise and all that. So I think it's just been a very, very interesting offseason. Lions a little bit more quiet on that end. I mean, really the big signing for the Lions has been DJ Chark. Finally, the Lions getting a guy who I think could be a number one receiver for them. Chark is a big body. I mean, I believe he's listed as 6'4". This is a guy that the Lions have been needing since they got rid of Kenny Golladay. A big body guy. And I think, like I said, I think DJ Chark is going to be that number one receiver. Now, there were rumors that Lions were going to go after Allen Robinson and all that. No. I get Allen Robinson's from Detroit. I get he went to St. Mary's. I never wanted Allen Robinson. He was declining in his career. He was getting older. He's almost 30. I just don't think he's that dynamic guy like he used to be. DJ Chark could be dynamic for the Lions. And on top of that, it's a 1-year deal. Very team friendly. I gotta give all credit to Brad Holmes in the front office in that one. Because this is a guy I think you could have easily overpaid for. Could have given him all this money to come to Detroit. Instead, they find a way to create a very team-friendly deal and create this 1-year contract, very incentive-based. Hey, if you perform next year and be the receiver that you think you can be, that we think you can be, we might be giving you, more money and be more invested. But this is sort of a tryout for DJ Chark, I think. A 1-year deal, see if it works out in Detroit. If not, they can cut him. He can go sign with another team and all that. But I really, really like the job that Brad Holmes and company have done, especially with that DJ Chark signing. Also, another one from a couple days ago, Chris Board, a linebacker from the Ravens. This isn't as a wow factor, I think, as the DJ Chark signing, but this is a guy that he was he saw a lot of time as a linebacker for the Ravens last season. He had 41 tackles. It was his career high. Former undrafted free agent from North Dakota State, and also a very core special teams player for the Ravens. And as I've mentioned before on the podcast, special teams is very, very key in the NFL. No matter what people say about offense and defense being so much better, special teams is just as important. You can win or lose games on special teams. You need a guy who can be a leader. Now, the Lions, that leader for them was always Jalen Reeves-Maybin. They have moved on from him. They needed another guy that could be that core special teams guy for them, and I think Chris Board could do that. Now, is he going to be just a special teams player? I don't think so. I think they have an opportunity to start him. I think he has, especially some experience in that Ravens defense, where I think the Lions might be okay with trying to see if he can compete for the starting job, especially with some of the guys that they re-signed, from last year's team. A couple of the other guys they re-signed: Alex Anzalone, Rashad Berry, a couple of those linebackers, Sean Dion Hamilton. Those guys, besides Anzalone, were more rotational guys, but I will admit, I was a little surprised when I saw that the Lions re-signed Anzalone. We all thought he was a one and done in Detroit, just didn't fit, scheme-wise, couldn't cover as a middle linebacker. But, looking back, though, you got to remember something. And this goes for some of the other guys. Tracy Walker, they re-signed. Charles Harris, they re-signed after playing well. Khalif Raymond, they signed. He worked hard this last season. Tim Boyle, David Blau, they re-signed both those quarterbacks. They re-signed Josh Reynolds. So some of these guys that they're re-signing, you might think, well, the Lions were so bad last year. Why do they keep re-signing these guys? But the thing is that minus Tim Boyle and David Blau, who I don't think are any good, but what choices do the Lions have right now at quarterback besides these guys? I think they needed to re-sign them, personally. But these other guys, Anzalone, Walker, Tracy Walker is not a bad safety. Is he going to be starting on like a playoff team? I don't think he is, but he's a guy that could be he's a solid contributor. A guy that's been here for a couple years now. Especially on a team that just doesn't have a lot of guys from previous years. He's a guy that's been there during the Matt Patricia era. He's been here a little bit longer than some of the other guys have. So having a guy like that, and Tracy's a really hard hitter too. He can set the tone in some games defensively from that safety position. I don't mind the Lions doing this. And like I said, I keep telling you guys this. This is not going to happen overnight. I get how some of you fans out there are very impatient. You guys want the Lions to win now. Got to win now. We've been waiting for 60 years. We got to win now. Guys, remember. I get there's some other teams out there that have been able to find a new head coach and win right away. But those are very, very different circumstances. Some teams already had pieces. The Lions had nothing. The Lions had nothing coming into this Dan Campbell thing. They lost their quarterback, Matthew Stafford. All those other veterans, they got rid of. They basically had no receiving core. What running backs did they have? Swift. That was about it. Defensively was a mess. Guys, this is not going to take overnight. I get why the Lions re-sign these guys. I think sometimes it's a little bit of we don't have a choice. Now, could they have been a little bit more aggressive on the free agent market? Yes. But remember, free agents, you got to wine and dine them to the city. You have to explain to them why. You have to convince them to come here and to play for you guys. Right now, it's not there. The foundation is getting there. But obviously, players want to see wins. The Lions don't have wins right now. They don't have many wins. I think eventually, once that foundation is completely set, completely built, that's when they're going to start getting bigger names, I think. And the one sort of big name that they got in free agency, DJ Chark, it's a one-year deal. It basically, I think of it as more of a tryout to see if this is going to fit for the Lions long term. If it does, great. They can re-sign him. If not, they can let him go. I don't mind that strategy at all from the Lions. But like I said, besides the Boyle and the Blau situations, I could see why the Lions re-signed some of these guys. Josh Reynolds, he played better down the stretch. Once they got him in that trade from LA, I think Goff played better. He finally found someone that he could rely on somewhat. Khalif Raymond, another guy. I don't think Khalif Raymond is going to be playing as much this year as he did last year, especially with the rookies that the Lions are going to be bringing in. You assume the Lions are going to draft at least one receiver this year. I don't know what round, but you assume that receiver will have a chance to compete for a starting position. I just think, Khalif, for being undrafted and all that, I think he worked hard on the team last year. And, I think he deserves a second chance, but I just don't think much is going to come out of this. But, Charles Harris being rewarded, former first-round pick, who had a real breakout year last year, I don't mind. I don't think the Lions got worse when these guys played in the game, except maybe Anzalone a little bit. But all these other guys, it's not like the Lions got any worse or lost games because of these guys. I don't think they lost games because of these guys. So if you're wondering why the Lions re-signed some of these guys, like I kind of was at the beginning, there you have it. I don't think they had a choice with some of these guys. I think once the foundation's set, then the free agents will start coming in the bigger names. Because every year it goes, why can't the Lions go for these bigger name receiver or these bigger name free agents? How come we never get any of those guys? Well, guys, you have to wine and dine free agents. You have to make them want to come here. You have to sell them. Kind of like recruiting a little bit in college. You have to sell them on this place. This is where they're moving their families. They're going to be here for a couple years, especially if they get a big deal. You got to have a foundation. And the players have to trust the coach that this team is going to do good things. Right now, I think the Lions are more in that stage where they're hoping maybe like 6, 7, 8 wins next year, and that might help build the foundation even more. And then hopefully by year 3 or 4, the goal should be playoffs. That's how I think they're attacking. Like I said, I could be completely wrong about that, but that's how I think it's happening right now. And we're going to see. In terms of the draft, I'm really starting to lean more towards Kevon Thibodeau from Oregon. I'm not really as high on Aiden Hutchinson as I used to be. My opinion has changed about him, and it's because of two things. One is short arms. And look, before you guys criticize that, the short arms thing I think is a big deal. And I get all these other measurements are silly sometimes. The hand size and, if he has small hands, he can't grip the football and all that. I get all that stuff at the combine. I think sometimes the combine's a waste of time for fans to watch. I think it's more if you're a GM scout, it's great. But as a fan watching it, it's like, why are you watching this? But still, I think there's the short arms sort of scare me a little bit because in the NFL, as a defensive end, you have to get separation. You got to use those hands, use those arms to bull rush and make, have all those other moves, rip move, all that stuff. And when you have short arms, I think experienced linemen can get underneath and really ride that defensive lineman. He can't get as much separation. I think that's a little scary. Another thing, really, I've been reading a lot of reports. Aiden Hutchinson really only has one move. He's going to have to develop more moves at the NFL level. Maybe in college you can get by with just having one big move. But look, I think Aiden's a great kid, honestly. I think he has a great work ethic. His father played at Michigan. I think he has a lot of drive, at least from the interviews I've seen and all that. I don't think it's not like he's just going to say, well, I'm Aiden Hutchinson. I'm from Michigan. Like, I'm one of the best guys in this draft. And I don't care about my moves, or I don't care about learning other moves. I don't think he's one of those guys. I think he's going to do everything he can to learn, more moves from the NFL. And quite honestly, this is a guy that could develop into something really good in the next couple of years. But the Lions don't need guys like that right now. They need guys who can contribute right away. It might take Hutchinson a little bit of time to contribute. I think Thibodeau is a little bit more NFL ready right out of college. That's why I'm a little scared of Hutchinson. I'm still high on him. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just not as high on him as I used to be. I'm a little more high on Thibodeau. So right now, I think the Lions should take Thibodeau at number 2. And it's going to be interesting to see what the Jags do at 1, because they're still, obviously, they are definitely not going quarterback. Already have their long-term guy in Trevor Lawrence. Just needs proper coaching, in my opinion. Linemen, they've been signing a lot of linemen, so I don't know if they're going to take that. Then the whole question is, if they go defensive end, who's it going to be, Thibodeau or Hutchinson? A lot of question marks. And I've seen reports the Lions might draft Kyle Hamilton. Guys, Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame. I've learned my lesson. Don't take DBs that high unless they're like an all-pro Hall of Famer right out the gate. Guys, the Lions took Okudah at number 3. Remember how many people out there were saying that this guy was going to be such a lockdown corner? What has he been? He stunk his rookie year, and he's been hurt ever since. I don't want a defensive back like that. And everyone's, Kyle Hamilton's so great. Guys, I don't want the Lions taking a safety at number 2. No. There are starting safeties in the NFL that were like 5th, 6th round picks. They don't need that. They need a guy like a defensive end, a guy that can wreak havoc. They don't need a safety at number 2. Now, if you want to go safety at, number 32, the second first-round pick from the Rams, I'm totally okay with that. Totally fine. But right off the bat, there's better players than a safety. There are way more pressing needs on this team than a safety. We talked about Tracy Walker earlier. Now, is Tracy some elite safety? No, I wouldn't say that. But he can hold down the fort. He's a hard hitter. Sort of a little bit of a veteran in the locker room. At this point, if the Lions take Kyle Hamilton, I'm not going to be happy. I want them to take Thibodeau. Now, if they do take Hutchinson, I'm not going to be mad about it, but I'm just going to question it a little bit. But I'm not going to be upset at all. Because like I said, I think Hutchinson is a guy that could develop into a good player. I just don't think he's going to be as ready right away as Thibodeau. But like I said, I think the Lions have more pressing needs at this moment. They need someone that can contribute right away. They need sort of like a culture guy. Penei Sewell, prime example. Started right away. Held his own out there. You saw him tussling with Aaron Donald against the Rams. He's a tough guy. He was one of the best rookies really in the NFL last year on the line. So I cannot wait for draft day. It's going to be in Las Vegas. Remember last year I got to go in Cleveland, and that was a lot of fun. I'm sure that atmosphere is going to be electric over there as well. All right, just before we close out of the podcast here on this week, I do want to give a special shout out to Coach Rick Finati at John Carroll, the former football coach now for John Carroll. And if you recognize that name, he was the director of football operations at Michigan for 2 years. He was a defensive assistant as well. Harbaugh's first 2 years, 2015 and 16. He's been a guest on this podcast before, and he's been a strong supporter of it. I had him on back in August of 2020, so a couple years ago. But we talked all about Michigan and all of his experiences there with Harbaugh and all that. But Coach Fanati has decided to step down as John Carroll's head coach, and we currently have an interim head coach right now, which is our offensive coordinator. So I just wanted to give Coach Fanati a special shout out, and he's not really going into coaching anymore. He's basically retiring from coaching and spending more time with his family and going more into, I think he's going to, insurance. But I just want to give a special shout out because I've been really close with Coach Fanati these last couple years and have worked with him for the football team here at JCU and been a real advocate for our legacy and our tradition, and really, really connected with the alumni really well, and all of the guys who are in the NFL from John Carroll. So I really wish Coach Fanati, a friend of the podcast and a former guest as well, best of luck in his new career endeavors as well. So best of luck, Coach, and thank you always for listening and tuning in and supporting this podcast. That is for sure. Make sure to check out all the other great content on the podcast network, the Michigan Podcast. I got to tell you, that helped me a lot, though, and I'm really hoping that those tips pay off from the Michigan Podcast and Steve Dace. I'll let you guys know in a couple weeks if it works out or not. But nonetheless, Steve Dace is a great podcast, especially for Michigan. I know he talks a lot about football and basketball as well. Even in the off seasons, he's got a lot of stuff going as well. And then Doc and Jock, the wrestling podcast, the Fan Report, Pistons season winding down as well. I'm sure Tiger Talk will be coming up pretty soon as well, since the Tigers are back in action. And like we said before, Tiger Talk will be, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Tigers in the next couple weeks. But, it's great that baseball is finally back. I think the lockout was ridiculous, especially if people in baseball are always complaining about how, the game is dying and they need to reach more fans. The lockout's the last thing you want to do to spread the game. I think there's just a lot of greedy owners and the players want more money, and it's just a whole mess. And, but at least they got it back. And they're going to play all 162 games. It's going to be a little bit later of a start. I believe April 8th is the Tigers' first game. So it's finally good that baseball is back, and the old ball hits the mitt, the bat, and all that, and the voice of the turtle is heard in our land, as the great Ernie Harwell would say. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in, and make sure to tune in next week, only on Open Mic Night.